Hello there and welcome. I am Imoni Amarere. This is People, Politics and Power. Nigeria has for several years running been challenged by agitations for self-determination by different groups. There is the now proscribed Indigenous Peoples of Biafra, IPOB, in the southeast, and Yoruba Nation agitators in the southwest. There is also the Nigerian Indigenous Nationalities Alliance for Self-Determination, a joint cooperation initiative of the Southern and Middle Belt peoples, amongst many others. While IPOB may have taken a violent path in its agitation, all the other self-determination movements have remained civil. Yet, the federal government has responded with strong armed tactics to their agitations and demands. The result is that the self-proclaimed leader of IPOB is incarcerated and on trial for treason, amongst other offenses. The self-styled leader of the Yoruba Nation agitators is detained in Cotonou, Benin Republic, after escaping arrest in Nigeria. Several appeals and calls on the central government in the past and even now to treat the agitations with greater civility have fallen on deaf ears. However, a recent pronouncement by the chief law officer of the country, the Minister of Justice and Attorney General, Abubakar Malami, appeared to suggest that the government might be having some rethink or second thoughts, as he says government is open to all possibilities and all kinds of solutions, including political ones, to resolve separatist agitations in the country. This has been interpreted in some quarters to mean a resort to dialogue with the various groups, a position which has been pushed for so long by some individuals and organizations. In the minister's new line of thinking, that is, if his new line of thinking reflects that of the federal government, then there might be a silver lining in the sky. But what exactly is his definition and understanding of a political solution? How critical is dialogue to national development? What manner of dialogue is required and acceptable to all parties concerned? Who should be involved in the dialogue? Is the option of engagement coming a bit too late in the day? How much impact will dialogue now, if it happens now, have on the ongoing trials in Nigeria and in Benin Republic? Will dialogue guarantee a more equitable and just society for all? The 1999 Nigerian Constitution emphatically says Nigeria is an indivisible and indissoluble entity. Will dialogue leads to the much talked about restructuring of the country? Will it end secessionist agitations now and in the future? And if not dialogue, what else? What are the other options that are open to Nigeria, to the government, and to the agitators? Join us in our discussion when we return in a short while from this break. All right, thank you so much for staying with us. Let's get to meet our guest analysts today, two of them here with us in the studio. First, from my far left is Ambassador Sani Bala. Ambassador Bala is the Executive Director, Savannah Center for Diplomacy and Development. Thank you so much for joining us, Ambassador.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, viewers.
Also joining us is Igo Akarega. Igo is the President, Civil Liberties Organization, CLO, and he's also the Abuja bureau chief of this Nigerian newspaper. Igor, thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon. It's good to be here.
Well, so Ambassador, let's begin with you.
Thank you.
Dialogue. How critical is it in nation building?
It is very critical. Actually, it's the foundation of existence, peaceful existence of any community. Without dialogue, without understanding, and real negotiation, give and take, then there won't be mutual respect. There won't be understanding, there won't be cooperation and working together as one people. If you dialogue, then you know yourself what you want, and you know what your countryman wants. You know what it takes to make him happy or make him productive as you want. So anything that you don't dialogue, you don't understand each other, you are bound to have chaos. You are bound to have conflict, because all human endeavor, they are working towards the resources, the natural resources that are there. Everybody wants to get a piece of it to make his or her life better. So we have to have understanding, cooperation, and the way to make everybody happy. I believe with dialogue, anything can be achieved.
Dialogue in a country like ours, which is a multi-ethnic, multi-religious, in fact, so many things.
So many things, yes.
And it does appear that over the years, from independence, we seem not to have taken the whole concept, the way you have put it,
Yes.
a whole concept of dialogue seriously. Because if we did, we probably would not have gone on a 30-month civil war. We probably would be a better country, a more progressive country than we are. So how critical is this?
Because we missed the point right before independence. If you look at all the constitutions before independence were negotiated on behalf of Nigerians. Indeed, some Nigerians were identified, were selected and taken to London, and then, but the views and all the positions were already predetermined by the colonial masters. The input of our citizens, Nigerians, was just like, yes, just agreeing to most of the positions, the fundamental positions. That is why we grew up, Nigeria, as I said somewhere, that it came as a nation that was born in fear and with fear. There was this predominance of suspicion. Each part of the country is feeling that it's going to be dominated by the other, either because of population or education or resources or whatever. The fear is there. It is prevalent everywhere. And if you are working in fear, you are incapacitated, because you have to take a lot of your resources to get rid of that fear before you move forward. And almost part of the whole part of the country, the fear is there. It has been with us for some time. We have to make sure that we deal with fear and then live together. The best way is you dialogue, because some of the things that we fear are just perceptions. We have to know the extent of what is it that we fear. Then we now accommodate it, and we make sacrifice. And we know that the other party is also making sacrifice. We have to make sacrifice, and we know the levels. So we'll be moving with full understanding of each other. But the way we are now, everybody with his own perception and his own feelings and his own ideas going here and there. That's why we are clashing. But I believe if we sit down and articulate all the issues one by one, then we'll be able to identify the areas of collaboration. And those fault lines, will downplay them. But unfortunately, there are some individuals across the country, maybe they have something to benefit from taking advantage of the situation. But we have to make sure that those who are for unity are the ones that are involved in the negotiations.
Iko, why does it appear that many of our political elite in Nigeria, from independence until now, seem to be averse to the genuine concept of dialogue?
You see, there are, first I must say that Nigeria is a very beautiful country. I have had to attend different events and fora where there have been all kinds of, for me, I call them fraudulent arguments, that the North is against the South and the South is against the North. Those are just, those are euphemistic words to hide the realities on ground. Now, there are two classes in a society, the upper class and the lower class. Now, who are those that constitute the upper class? It is those who seek to sustain the current order of inequality and injustice. That's what constitutes the upper class. And then the lower class, usually they are those we call the talakawas, the ordinary people, and they are the working class. The working class usually constitutes the bulk of the majority of agitators who wants a fair play, who wants some level playing field, who wants some kind of injustice and equity. But for those who are benefiting from the unjust system, they fight very hard to sustain that status quo. That is the struggle, that is the struggle for and contestation for power in societies. And that is what we have in Nigeria, which unfortunately so. Now, Ambassador Bala mentioned some things that are of interest to me, and I completely agree with him. The root cause of crisis in nations across the world, if you look at the history of the First World War, the Second World War, the Bosnian War, former Yugoslavia, most recently the war in Syria, where President Assad, refused to listen to dialogue. Just a few persons were protesting on the streets. They were calling for equity and justice, and they were calling for an end to military and police brutality in the state. And Assad rolled out the tanks against them. That was what led to the formation of the Free Syrian Army. And the rest is history. War broke out in that country. If you also look at our own local example in Nigeria, when the Civil War was declared in 1967 by the late Dumego Ojukwu, after they fought up to a point, and then the need for dialogue arose. And they went to Ghana, the Aburi Conference. We all know what that is. If the outcome of the Aburi Conference was adhered to by all the parties, I'm sure more lives would have been saved, and I'm sure the country would have forged ahead, perhaps much more better than where we are today. So for me, the current separatist agitation to move away, maybe to move away from the country, to create some kind of independence for nations, for the sub-nations that makes up the country, are all a combined product of perceived injustice and oppression. And what has led to it, if you look at two operating words in the Constitution, we are told that Nigeria is indissoluble and indivisible. For me, those two words are not only fraudulent, but they are criminally oppressive. When you say, for example, I have never seen a union of people. Don't forget, Nigeria comprises of more than 250 ethnic groups. Now, we are living together with the understanding that we understand ourselves and we are going to share this country on the basis of fair play and equity. Now, but when you insert that kind of proviso in the Constitution, that it is indissoluble and it is indivisible, what it suggests is that whether you like it or not, whether you are dissatisfied at any point, you must remain in the Union. The recent example is the United Kingdom, UK. We saw Northern Ireland, the Sinn Féin movement in Northern Ireland. It was dialogue that at some point the British government had no choice that to grant some level of loose federation and autonomy to the Sinn Féin movement. We have Northern Ireland in the Irish Republic. That was the Irish Republican Army, and today we have Ireland as a country of its own. So for me, the solution to all of this, basically and very clearly, is we must first insist that the question of indissolubility and indivisibility of Nigeria must be removed. And if we must, to also forge ahead as a country, the question of ethnicity, religion, and all of that must be removed from the Constitution. I'm seeing the attempt to review the Constitution. But the core issues that touches on the very foundation of the lives of the ordinary people of Nigeria, it's like we are glossing over it. How do you fill a form as a Nigerian citizen and you are told to put your local government, your religion, the language you speak,
your state of origin,
and all those kind? Those are divisive. Those demands are by themselves very divisive, and those are the fault lines that I think that the system, the system in Nigeria is seeking to deepen rather than resolve. And it is only a national dialogue that can resolve a lot of these questions.
So again, the question arises, Ambassador, what kind of national dialogue should we be looking at? The expectation generally was that, well, our representatives at the legislative arm of government, at the federal level, who represent constituencies, smaller constituencies, senatorial districts and all of that, should be able to push through some form of dialogue. But that hasn't happened. And everyone is talking about dialogue. Let's talk, let's sit down and talk over our problems and the various issues that seem to separate us.
Yes.
So what kind of national dialogue should we be looking at? Are we talking of another national conference? Because we had one in 2014. We had a number before then. They all seem not to have produced the expected results.
Yes. Actually, what we know is a holistic dialogue. If I may digress a little bit, if you look at the selection process, leadership selection process in this country, the crop of legislators that we have now, you look at how they came, how they were elected. It was through a skewed system. All the political parties were guilty of imposition. They were guilty of just picking people and imposing them on people. They are guilty of so many malpractices in the electoral system. So how can you say now? I don't think the people really have the confidence that the current leaders in the National Assembly can really get their agitations resolved. So we need a different platform. Quite all right, constitutionally, it has to be through the National Assembly and so on. But since these agitations have been going on, have you seen any part of the country that now asks its representatives to pursue their demands? Everybody is claiming being marginalized. Everybody is claiming being ignored. Everybody is claiming being denied so many things in the administration. But the right way to go is through your representatives. So that let the representative, you call them to order, you tax them. But what we have seen now in the last several years, nobody is going through that path. So we need to have an open-ended, a larger area that you can bring in so many people, the youth organization, the women organization, the market women, traders, so many. Let them come, let them talk, let them say what they want. Let people really know. And by the time everybody understands, the people from the South House, they have problem of degradation. Yes, it's a real problem. So they cannot get food. Here in the North, you have big land, so we can grow food. Why don't we now arrange and then make it easy for each other? Instead of, no, if you bring these people, they'll come and dominate us like this. All these fears, we should remove them. And the best way to do that is to be talking with each other, not talking to each other. Get what I'm saying? Oh, at each other. We just start throwing bad words and hate speech and so on. But real constructive engagement, that we bring out our problems, bring out our demands, we negotiate. Yes, okay. You check the Constitution. All those irrelevant aspects of the Constitution, you remove them. And you have a new one that will accommodate and mitigate all these problems. I believe it goes beyond just the National Assembly. It has to involve other parts, civil society, especially civil society organizations, because government has failed so far. All the conferences that we have had, 2004, 2014, they are all there. None has been implemented. But I believe with civil society organization, we can get up and bring all the reports, bring out all the recommendations, and then now galvanize the public to make sure that government implements those good recommendations. I believe that's what I feel.
Igor, in the last 6 years, 6 to 6.5 years, it appears, and I mean, it's a fact that separatist agitations have gathered more momentum than it was before 2015. And where, like the ambassador has put it, everyone and every section of this country claims one form of marginalization or the other. Everyone is aggrieved about one thing or the other. Government does not seem to be listening or sympathetic to those agitations. And it also appears that the so-called elders of society have failed in their responsibility in helping to bring together these disparate groups and leaders of thought to say, let us sit down and see what we can do and have a better society. So in the last 6 years to 6.5 years, it's been one form of agitation or the other. It's either from the south-south, from the southeast, from the middle belt. What have you? I mean, more and more groups are springing up every day with various demands.
You see, let me make this point very quickly. A lot of people have blamed the current president, President Muhammadu Buhari, that you know, perhaps he has failed, as it were, to implement the 2014 confab report. But my point is this: if you look at the trajectory from 1999, once the military handed over to civilians in 1999, Nigerians who felt dissatisfied all along, because under the military, they were more like a jackboot form of administration. They will not brook any nonsense. They will not even brook any public protest. Some of us were in the streets in Lagos, in Yaba, with the late Chief Gani Fawemi, Femi Falana. So many of them will listen back over. You know, it was actually the civil society groups that mobilized heavily along with the labor movement, you know, to chase the military away from the political space. But the civil society themselves were not organized enough to also occupy the political space, strategic positions. So it is the political class who were just waiting in the wings, who have been hobnobbing with the military all along, in business with them, in cahoot with them, that saw the space, Akiditos, but they had the resources and they were able to then move in. And that is where our own problem also then began as a civil society group. Now, under former President Obasanjo, there were agitations. The agitations moved on to the era of Yaradua, the late Yaradua, who, of course, a great statesman. He was able to, and that was when the movement for the emancipation of the Niger Delta, that was at the peak of their own agitation in the Niger Delta, kidnapping of expatriates and all of that, crippling of the oil sector. And we all saw how that affected the economy of the country. But Yaradua, being a statesman, he was able to meet. He evolved a process of dialogue. He engaged the militants, flew some of their leaders to Abuja, discussed with them, and an agreement was reached. And that brought peace to the Niger Delta. So from about, at the peak of the crisis, Nigeria was doing 2 million barrels of crude a day, but it dropped to about 650 to 700. But by the time President Yaradua moved in, it then peaked again to about 1.82 million. So that is the effect and the importance and advantage of dialogue. Now we moved on from there to the Jonathan era. The pressure continued with men off the scene. Other groups came up. We have the Odua People's Congress and several other groups came up. Boko Haram was also there from 2004 or 2009 and all that. Yeah. So President Jonathan was having to deal with that. It was at a point they were even in Abuja. He designed a dialogue process. I remember people like Wole Soyinka, people like, even at the point, this current President Muhammadu Buhari was nominated to also speak for some of the groups, you know. And there were dialogue, but I think it broke down at some point. It was then that President Jonathan then felt, okay, he's going to put in place a national dialogue. That was what gave birth to the
2014 National Conference.
And a report came out, a report was made, but of course he just had 5 years or so, and he handed over to the current administration. But government should be a continuum. one would have thought that with the APC promising change and that they were going to restructure the country, they were going to provide security and some other key operating words, which convinced Nigerians that the ruling party was going to do things differently from the PDP. And they were voted into power. But even the very minimum issue of restructuring, we are not saying restructuring means dissolving the country and allowing all the component parts to go their way. No, restructuring touches on the very root and fundamentals of citizens' existence. Because if, as a Southerner, I cannot engage, engage comfortably with a Northerner, if we are looking at ourselves with the prism of suspicion as the ambassador, then we are not one as a country. Why is America great today? America is great today because once you get to the United States, there's equity and justice. They deliver it to you without you even having to ask for it. It is almost on autopilot. It runs on its own. You are entitled to certain rights and privileges as an American citizen. And that's how it should be in Nigeria. What Nigerians are not asking for too much. So for the agitators in Southwest, the Odua Republic agitators, IPOB and all of that, all these are a product of dissatisfaction. People are just dissatisfied, and the government is not listening. If the government is listening, if today President Buhari convokes a national dialogue and say, okay, bring Igboho to Abuja, go and bring Nnamdi Kanu, I want to meet the key leaders of this agitation. Let's hear them out. I'm sure a lot of this tension will come down. But when you give the impression that you have the machinery of the coercion of state power, then of course people will also say that we are living in modern times. To procure weapons of violence is almost, we also talk about porous borders. These things are common. So non-state actors are already also beginning to occupy the public space and challenging state actors to say, look, you cannot continue to monopolize power at our own disadvantage. We can also challenge you.
Yes.
And that is why we are having a lot of national discomfort at all levels.
The divisions and the anger of some of these groups, ambassador, have become very deep-seated.
Yes.
In the last couple of years. Have they gone so far that we cannot redeem the situation? What for you would be an ideal dialogue template that would be acceptable to all the groups that are at the moment very angry and dissatisfied with the Nigerian system?
I don't think the situation is irredeemable. It can be redeemed, but there must be justice and equity in whatever you do. You see, people must have trust in government. Government must make people trust it. Once people don't trust government, definitely there will be failure. Why is it that people don't trust government? It's because there is no justice, no equity, no fairness. Imagine, just remember the composition of the last national conference. There was too much agitation there. No, you have so many Christians, you have so many Northerners, you have so many youth, you have this, you have that. All these are issues that can be addressed. If we are going to convoke a national conference, we must make sure that the platform, the structure, is one that is acceptable to the majority of the people. Make sure it is all-inclusive, it is equitable and fair. If you go that way, definitely you have solved the problem 50%. Because the foundation of the whole thing is that we don't trust each other. We don't trust each other. But once you bring something, a structure that can build trust, then from there we move on. You have cooperation, you have understanding, and you have sacrifice. Therefore, these groups and agitations, they keep on metamorphosing because there has not been response. Government has been mute or ignored, whatever, or considering, as it were. But it has taken a very long time in this consideration. Things like this, they need urgent attention. You must show that, yes, you are responsive and you are responsible. But the moment you keep quiet, you ignore. You think that the problem will take care of itself. You are deceiving yourself. We have to wake up and face these challenges, bring out a structure that will address every aspect of the problems. to at least give people the confidence that, yes, we are now serious and we want to be fair to all.
So for you, the style of this government in keeping quiet or hoping that the problem will go away on its own has not worked.
It's defeatist. You can see it. Every day you are seeing new forces coming up. And the old ones are still emphasizing, strengthening their positions, and are calling for real division. You look at and it doesn't take much. All you need to do is come down, sit down. What is it that is important? Let me take the issue of tax, for instance. Revenue generation. Some states may say, okay, I don't want tax on this, but other states will have to tax on so many others. Federal government is the biggest tax collector. But in other areas, if you sit down with states, look, instead of federal government to take tax on this, states go and take them. That will bring them down. They will have their revenue coming to them directly instead of appropriating everything. And then even the responsibilities, you can divest some, you can devolve to the states, and then the states to the federal, to the local government, and make sure that they work. But in a situation where the political arrangement is skewed, definitely we cannot succeed. We have to be open and sincere, even in our political arrangement. In elections, we have to make sure that people elect the people they want, not imposition, not just giving the cronies and houseboys of political leaders.
All right, well, let's take a short break. We'll return in a moment. Thank you so much for staying with us. Igor, we run a federal system of government. At least that's what our constitution, the 1999 constitution, says. And in a federal system of government, there ought to be more of cooperation than of antagonism, the way we are going today. Now, if we were to look at this whole concept of political solution to the current crisis of separatist movements and all of that, because as it is now, it appears to me, I may be right or wrong, that the federal government is beginning to come around a bit, although late in the day, to see that this is the step it ought to have taken from the word go, and perhaps we will be in a better place than we are at the moment. Now, what can be achieved between now and 2023 in terms of political solution to the current crisis? Don't forget that some of these agitators are already on trial, are in prison, both in Nigeria and outside of Nigeria. What would be the kind of template you would suggest, you would put on the table to say, okay, in order to have a meaningful dialogue, meaningful discussions, good understanding of where we want to be, what is that template?
Well, there are a lot of templates that anyone with the right political will can adopt to resolve, the emerging challenges. But my worry basically is the ruling class that I see now, the ruling class led by President Muhammadu Buhari, I do not think that they are interested in having these issues resolved. Rather, we are behaving as if we are a country of ostriches, burying our heads in the sand and then pretending that all around us is well. Right in Cameroon here, you have the Ambazonia forces who are also seeking independence from mainstream French-speaking dominated Cameroon. So for me, if you are seeing the signs, including what happened during the Arab Springs, if you look at the entire North Africa, they had some stable form of governance for about 200 years. Apart from Anwar Sadat of Egypt, who at some point he was removed, and all of that. If you look at Algeria, they had some measure of stability. In West Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, and Liberia and all that had witnessed a lot of turbulence, particularly under the military era, with a lot of coups and counter-coups. So the point I'm making here is, we pretend that we are a federated unit, a federal government, and all of that. What are the components and characteristics of a country practicing true federalism. You need to have your state police, you need to have your independent judiciary, independent legislature, and all of that. Apart from maybe customs duties, finance, and army and all that, which should be in the exclusive list. All others should be on the concurrent list, and let the states should even have their own Supreme Courts, as we have in the United States, such that when you devolve power sufficiently, there will be less pressure on the center. So what we're having today, because whether it is under the military, because between 1966 and 1972, we practiced clearly a unitary system of government. And so when the military came in, they pretended as if they are pursuing some form of pseudo-democracy. And then they said, oh, now is federal government and all. But all the key components of a unitary system of government is retained within the current federal structure that we have, such that we have only one Supreme Court in Abuja here, in 36 states of the Federation, and that is why I was checking the last figures. We have about 20,000 cases unresolved at the Supreme Court, because how many justices do you have at the Supreme Court to resolve all of these matters? So we are going to continue to take 2 steps forward and 10 steps backward as a country if we fail to devolve power, if we fail to genuinely restructure. So President Buhari still have about 2 years. In fact, a leader with the right political will can do a lot in 6 months.
Yes.
The current, the APC controls the Senate and the House of Representatives. It takes the president to send an executive bill to the National Assembly to say, look, this is what I want. Call the principal officers to the bill and brief them. And I'm sure the country will make giant strides, even in 6 months, if there's a political way.
Without first consulting with the constituent units and the various sections of the country, now, as to know exactly what is acceptable to them.
What is acceptable is already known. What are the demands of the agitators? What are the basic demands in the north? Because when people say that if somebody from my region holds power, then we are free, we will enjoy it, it's not true. Over time, evidence have shown that when somebody from your village is the president, it does not mean you are going to start enjoying. When President Obasanjo was representing the Southwest and Yorubas, was president, the Yorubas didn't enjoy. They were also agitating. When President Goodluck Jonathan from my own region, the South, became president, that was even when agitations grew. So, and the Southwest was underdeveloped. The East-West Road was not constructed. So many things, the Niger Bridge and all of that, so many things were not done. Now, President Buhari, who comes in from the north, from Katsina State, we all know what is happening in Katsina today. So it is foolhardy for anybody to think that because if the president comes from your place, then you is Eldorado, you are not going to enjoy it. It is not true. So it is time for all Nigerians to join hands, whether from the south, east, west, and north. We need to join hands and agree on our common demands. What are basically the common demands? To resolve the question of poverty and hunger, unemployment, justice, security, and all of that. The Nigerians are not asking for so much. Once your child, a poor man's child, can attend the same school with that of a rich man, everybody is going to be happy. But when the poor man is sick in this country, you die of even malaria and all that. But when the elites are sick, they have private jets. They fly off to US and UK to treat themselves, including Mr. President. He does that, even though he said he was not interested in medical tourism. But we have seen so far, since he also emerged, that he has been at the forefront of also quickly jetting out to go and take care of himself. So the ruling elite do not want to die. They want to stay alive and continue to oppress the rest of us. So but the point is, if you fail to put in place the right structures, the system will also consume everybody at some point, because there will be an internal implosion at some point that nobody will be able to control. What you see in the north today, when people say Boko Haram is some form of resistance, couched in other kinds of languages. What you also see in IPOB and Yoruba agitation, these are people who are seeking to have some form of fair treatment at the center, and they are not getting it. And it is going to get worse. My fear is that by 2023, if President Buhari does not address the issues, by 2023, when a new president comes, and the people see that this man, particularly if the president does not emerge from a credible leadership recruitment process, as Ambassador said earlier, if it's somebody foisted on the rest of the country, they will probably not be sitting down here discussing whether we are practicing true federalism or unitarism.
Well, Ambassador,
yes.
Supposing, this is hypothetical.
Okay.
Supposing the president today decides to convoke some kind of dialogue. Do you think that that alone would help to lessen the tension that appears to be so much across the country today? Will it assuage the anger and the tension that we see in people from different parts of the country at the moment?
It will if the platform is fair, just, and all-inclusive. But once it is skewed or it is marginalized, if some people still feel marginalized, definitely it will aggravate the anger. But I believe if Mr. President decides now to convoke a national conference, my advice to him is that let him engage the civil society organizations. All the civil society organizations in Nigeria should be his first port of call, because they are the ones that will tell him the truth and will make sure that everything is done equitably, fairly, and with relevant justice. I believe majority of the civil society organizations that are operating in Nigeria, they are exposed every day. They are exposed to these fears, these agitations, more than even the government itself. Because sometimes Mr. President may not know actually what is going down the ladder. But the civil society organizations, they are the ones who are working with the people day in, day out. They know the feelings, they know the real fears.
What about the concern that these civil society organizations are also peopled by Nigerians who have their own idiosyncrasies and their own agenda to push?
Definitely, if their own
ethnic, religious, whatever.
Their own agenda may not be different. It cannot be different from the agenda of all the other groups that are not civil society organizations. But those who are expressing these fears of domination, fears of marginalization and deprivation. My point is that they are more in contact with these agitators. They feel more about the feelings and the yearnings, aspirations of the agitators. I'm not saying that he should not involve people in government, but let him also give the civil society organization a place, a role, a big role to play in the creation of the platform, so that we make sure that it is fair, it is just, and it is all-inclusive. Once you do that, then definitely the majority of the people will start feeling that, yes, the feeling of belonging will now be there. And they know that they are going to participate. They know that they are going to be involved. They know that they are going to gain something and also give something. Because negotiation, dialogue is give and take. You can't take everything and you don't give anything. You have to give and then you take. So once they know they are going to be involved, the tension will go down. And we should be frank and sincere. There must be sincerity in the conduct of the dialogue. It should not be skewed. It should not be taken over.
Do you see any of that in the personages, in the people who are in government today? You see some resemblance of sincerity and frankness?
Well, what I see, there are very few that are very, very sincere, that can bring other people from outside the government. Currently are outside the government, but there are so many of them who are sincere, who are honest, who are patriotic, who can really make it happen. Out of the few that are in government, they will bring the rest who are outside the government. Majority of these good people are outside the government. I'm happy that the Attorney General of the Federation is saying that, yes, government is amenable to political solution. A political problem needs political solution. So, which means the government is ready to partner and also give and take. So I believe the good people that are capable of, controlling or conducting the conference honestly and sincerely, they are there. There are so many of them. All parts of Nigeria, you can get them.
Igor, do you think that in this regard, the Attorney General and Minister of Justice can be trusted? We know that from time to time, government officials speak from both sides of the mouth.
With profound respect, I do not think that this Attorney General that we have now, that he can be trusted. We have had to engage him at different fora, and if you look at his activities since he became Attorney General and Minister of Justice, he seems to be pushing the position more of the elitist class than than issues that would benefit the majority of the people. So if you are pushing a class interest that is seemingly narrow, then people are naturally going to be dissatisfied. Now, if the Attorney General is also saying that the government is disposed to a political solution, for me, I see that as political rhetorics, political convenience, to give some semblance of hope that is non-existent. Nigerians are tired of hoping against hope that something is going to happen. Something is going to happen the next month, and it doesn't happen. So when you give hope to people and they wait for a while, why? Look at the EndSARS protest, how the Nigerian youth poured into the streets. It is because they waited for about 4 years of the Buhari administration that maybe this President Buhari, and maybe, if I can remember very well, the late Moshood Kashima Olawale Abiodun, I think it is these two of them and the ones that has had the most popular votes across the country in terms of emerging as president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Abiola secured votes, massive votes from the north, from the south, from the east and west. So it is also with Buhari, and that was why he was able to rewrite history by being the first candidate, to remove a sitting president, to remove a Nigerian sitting president. So I thought that he was going to quickly catch in on that
in a democratic election.
Yes, in a democratic election. Catch on that advantage to quickly make certain decisions that, will stabilize all sections of the country. But I think many people are a bit disappointed. It's not too late because he himself has recognized it. He has said that he's not going to hand over power in 2023 as a president that failed. So he is going to take the necessary steps to also ensure that he delivers on some of his key promises. We are waiting to see him do that. He's in France now. I think he has traveled to South Africa. For me, looking for the funds is good, but first stabilize your home front, make sure the security, citizens are happy. Then naturally, foreign investors will come. You don't go begging them to come. They will come to you when you have made yourself into a beautiful bride. So for us, by way of a resolution of all of it is simple. Lee Kuan Yew, who turned around the fortunes of Singapore, was an old man, a 70-year-old man. He was president at some point. He left and handed over. The people who took over power from him messed up Singapore, and Singaporeans became a laughing stock, among the Asian tigers. And he promised that he was coming to transform Singapore. And today, Singapore is one of the best countries in Asia. So is China too, with President Xi Jinping, to the extent that the Chinese people, on their own, voluntarily, said that he should become their life president. That is the satisfaction of a people with a leader. When the tension, Confucius, a Chinese philosopher, said that when the tension of a leader is good, that the people themselves will be good. That means if he comes to power, he begins to deliver justice, equity, and good governance, and the people will be happy, and the people will be good. That is one of the key philosophies of Confucius. And I think that is very important that Nigerian leaders learn from it. And they really don't have too much time, because the youth do not have the kind of patience that the old brigade have. The youth, this is a digital world. At the press of a button, you are going to get information. They know what is happening. You can't deceive anybody anymore. So when you come with policies of deception, you saw what happened in the Anambra election when a woman was to be given 5,000 naira with her and she rejected it. That we don't want this money, and the governor has just rewarded the woman, I think, with about 1 million naira. That is the way Nigerians should go.
Okay.
Yeah, that is very important.
Ambassador Bala, yes. On a final note, what are your hopes?
My hopes for Nigeria is that we ourselves should be able to create an atmosphere of understanding, cooperation, and unity. And we should drive the process ourselves. The youth, I believe, are the real champions. They have this responsibility The old guard, I can say, we have failed, but the youth, you have the future of Nigeria in your hands. If you go violent way, you will destroy Nigeria and you will destroy yourselves. But if you go by dialogue, understanding, cooperation, and inclusiveness, we'll have a better Nigeria.
Thank you so much. Ambassador Sani Bala is the Executive Director, Savannah Center for Diplomacy and Development. Thank you so much for joining us. And Igor Akarega is the President, Civil Liberties Organization, CLO, and the Abuja Bureau Chief of this Nigeria newspaper. Thank you, Igor, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Right. That's our program for today. Please join us again when we bring you a fresh edition of People, Politics, and Power.